Hey everyone, we are back with another episode of WWBTD. What would the behavior team do? We are here with people you already know, as always, Ashley Mosley, Joy, and Jen. And then we have two special guests from the trauma team. We have Leah and Monica. So thank you both so much for being here with us. And as always, we have an icebreaker, a little holiday festive one. So, Monica, I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite festive holiday sock this year?
I have many festive socks. It was hard to choose, but I finally did it. All right, so my favorite is these cozy little sloths.
Ooh.
Yes, I have a sloth mug that I drink my coffee, and I wear my sloth socks and cozy up. So, yeah,
Oh my
cozy
goodness.
socks are my favorite.
Wow, I have sloth socks. I didn't even think of that. I also share a love of sloths. I think they're super bizarre creatures and
Yes.
I enjoy them very much.
Very cute.
Yes. Jen, you love a good sock. What do you got?
Well, I pulled out these because they have animal prints. And if you know me at all, I love everything animal print. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Leah, what have you got over?
Yes. This is a sock that celebrates my dog's faith.
Oh.
This is I can wear them on my feet, always with me. It's a holiday every day with Frederick, my chihuahua.
Ready.
Oh my gosh, did you say Frederick?
Yes, he came with the name. Love
That
him.
is so special. Oh my goodness. I've been thinking of making ones for my cats. That's awesome. Joy.
You're going to make socks for your cats to wear or socks for you to wear?
Oh my gosh. Kitten mittens? No. 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 I'm saying the ones like get their face on the socks.
Oh, gotcha. I didn't have holiday socks, but I have like my little sparkly booties that I'm wearing.
Oh, precious. Okay. And Ashley Mosley.
I have the little Santa's helper socks.
Oh my goodness. It looked like are they bells hanging off?
Well, I wish not really, but that's what it looks like. That's what it should be.
Yes. Awesome. And
Kate,
so,
how about you?
these are dinosaur
Oh, I love it.
socks. So, yes, if you can't tell, they are all in sweaters. Dinosaurs in sweaters. And yes, that is a T-Rex trying to put the star on the tree, but he can't because his arms are too small because he's a T-Rex. Obviously, it is my favorite. So anyway, I hope you shared my enthusiasm in that moment. Okay, so getting back to our episode with trauma, we kind of want to start off and to hear from our two guests. Really, what is trauma?
Sure. I can take my best stab at, we'll start really broadly and then I can give you maybe more specific definition. Really broadly, trauma is what results from encountering stress that overwhelms our ability to cope at like the very basic level. Every person has internal and external resources at their disposal to cope with adversities throughout the days, throughout their lives. And when we experience something very scary or life-threatening that overwhelms our ability to cope, and maybe perhaps we don't have adequate support in our lives, the lasting results that can change the way we think or feel or act can be characterized as trauma broadly.
Wow. Okay. So it can really touch everyone, is what you're.
Yep.
Okay.
Humans are very resilient generally, so we can encounter a fair amount of stress and rebound most times. But sometimes there are situations where we do see some lasting effects from the stress that we encounter. So yeah, it's a human experience. It's part of this thing that we call life.
Sure. How would you say, just in your experience working with our students and parents and families, how is trauma typically perceived?
Monica, what do you think?
I think we still have a lot of stigma attached to the word trauma. So a lot of times it can be perceived as, oh no, now I'm traumatized, or my kid is traumatized, as something very negative, right? So we would like to just normalize that trauma can happen to any of us, and many times it does. 1 in 4 students are affected by trauma. And right now, with the world that we are living in, many are also saying we're experiencing a collective trauma with the pandemic going on, in addition to a lot of other things going on in our country right now. So definitely trauma can be perceived as something negative. So we would just like to reiterate that let's talk about trauma. Let's talk about what's going on in your kid's life. Let's talk about what's going on in your life. Because when we begin to talk about the reality of the things that are affecting us in whatever way, trauma can affect your mental health, your physical health. It can affect your spirit. It can just affect all areas of a person's functioning. So the first step in even talking about healing or resiliency is first to acknowledge that trauma is happening or has happened.
So since you did bring up it's really the elephant in the room, how could we not, what's going on with the pandemic, and this year has been such a roller coaster, and you say, at the first step is kind of recognizing, how would someone go about, figuring out, well, oh, am I just like stressed out or anxious, or did what I just experienced or what I'm experiencing, it is trauma? How can we discern?
And Monica, jump in if I'm not hitting all the points. Sometimes I think that we can think about trauma in a few ways, right? Some might think of post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a diagnosable mental health disorder. I think that it can help us understand when we should maybe consider our symptoms to be a little bit more longer lasting. It has to do with how long we're feeling out of sorts after, if we're thinking a concrete event, like a concrete stressful event, we might start to see signs and symptoms in the ways that we think, behave, and are acting around other people as maybe worth getting attention. Maybe after I think it's about 3 weeks, is more if we're gonna be really clinical about it. But if you notice that time has passed and you're still feeling off, whatever that might be for you, maybe you're feeling more anxious, maybe you're sleeping more, maybe you have some other pains that are in your body, maybe your sleeping is disrupted, or you're having nightmares for over 2 weeks, that's really a sign that our bodies and our minds give us that it might be time to seek some more professional guidance about what's going on for you. I don't know, Monica, did I characterize that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important for us to mention that stress and trauma, stress from trauma is normal, right? Anytime somebody experiences a traumatic event, it's normal that person might react with some anxiety, right? With some feelings of sadness, with some physical, headaches, or I have a tummy ache that doesn't go away, right? So it's normal that you're gonna have a reaction for most people. Some people will not, and the way they react is more like, I'm gonna numb it out, right? I'm gonna pretend it didn't happen. So there's all levels of reactions, there's all levels of coping, but like Leah is saying, it really starts to become something that needs further attention when that feeling of anxiety or that feeling of depression or sadness is not going away, and it's impacting every area of my life, like my connections, my relationships, my work, my ability to do what I need to do on a daily basis. So if you find yourself in that state where you're unable to function in a way that is productive for you. And it's been longer than likely, if we are getting clinical, it is like, have you had these symptoms for more than 2 weeks? That's when it starts to become like something to look at further. So right now, as I was saying, we're in the middle of a lot of stress. Our world is crazy right now, right? So it's going to be normal that since March, since this pandemic came out, you're probably having emotions that are crazy up and down, right? One day you're great. One day you're hopeful. The next day you're just full of fear, full of sadness, right? Or you're just crying out of the blue. So we're living in a time that is not normal. So those definitions of what is clinical or not could be a little skewed right now, just because our times are so, they're just so like no other time we've ever had. But if you know yourself well, right? You know how you function. If you notice that it's just too much for you to cope with, and you're just, every day is hard for you, I would say really start thinking about, getting some support from a mental health professional. And maybe don't even wait until you can no longer cope. Maybe be proactive and say, my mental health is important. I need to talk to somebody. We're very fortunate, in Denver Public Schools, we have access to counselors that we can see through an employee assistance program. And I just recently, I'm on my, decided to call somebody, not because I'm in the depths of depression or anxiety, right? But because I want to be proactive with my mental health. So like I'm on session 3 or 4, and it's helping me to talk to somebody, to just say, you know what, I'm going in and out of fear with COVID. Can I just have a safe place to talk about my mental health? So anyhow, there's my thoughts on that.
Monica, that sort of leads me to a question that I was thinking about, because we are in crisis. DPS is, the state is, the world is. So, and especially our kids. So how can we proactively help them build up some stamina for the stress that's just not going away anytime soon?
As a parent,
Parent or educator, either.
Or an educator, right? The most important thing right now is to help ourselves, right? To make sure our mental health is okay, that we're on top of taking care of our own well-being, because only then can we serve our students. Only then can we really help our kids, which brings us to really the heart of trauma-informed practices, which is building that resilience. Like Leah said, we all have that inner resilience within us. It's there, but it can also be built, right? And we need sometimes support and resources to be able to build that inner strength within us with strategies. So taking care of our own wellness is going to be first and foremost for parents, for educators, for anyone that is serving their community. Your own mental health is going to be the most important. Secondly, is giving kids strategies. And this is where we can get into some of the trauma-informed practices that can be very practical. We're talking about creating and making sure your students and your kids feel safe, psychologically as well as physically. And how do we do that? We do that by creating environments where there is predictability. That's a big one. Predictability. Have some routines, have some rituals, some things that you do on a daily basis to create safety for your kids. That's going to be so helpful. Be flexible. Be flexible with your kids. Be flexible with yourself. Allow a little bit more freedom and empower your students. That's going to be another factor. Empower your kids to feel like they are capable, like they can do this. And then my favorite and most important strategy, call it whatever you want, is connection. We need to be connecting with our students at a very heart level. Right now, academics comes second to connection to the heart, in my opinion, because we are in the middle of crisis. So those authentic relationships that we have with our kids, whether you're a parent or whether you're an educator, is really where it's at right now. Leah, you want to add to that?
No, I think we can. No, I think you.
Okay.
Yeah, Monica, that was really helpful. Just like to list that out, like predictability, flexibility, connection. Those are just some really concrete steps. And like, I was also thinking when you said taking care of ourselves, just when we're doing that, we're also modeling for students to,
Yes.
and our kids to take care of themselves too. That's the best way to teach. So thank you. That was a really, really helpful answer.
Yes.
It's interesting too, because, you know, we've had some episodes where we talk about what behavioral strategies, you know, can work with kids being at home and like remote learning. And honestly, there's such overlap with what you just said, like having that time for connection, for fun, for you know, having structure and routine. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm making the connection here. This is all overlapping, right? This is really what kids crave, structure. If, you know, this is what they get at school, right? School is inherently structured typically, right? Or it should be. And so at home, it's a different environment. So how can we kind of replicate some of that these students are craving, and that predictability and that feeling of safety? Yeah, I think that's awesome. Yeah. Very cool. So when you say give kids strategies, right? Because as adults, we typically have more coping skills with when we deal with stress. What do you have any that you go over when you're maybe talking with schools? Any specific strategies for kids to kind of deal with some of these stressors?
I'm trying to think, Monica. My brain is on a whim, because we do often talk with adults and like how they can support students. I'm trying to translate that to like directly into a more parent-child relationship. But I think one of the things that adults can do, and this is the thing, I mean, I think that giving strategies to students, you know, it is helpful. But I don't know. I think that Monica and I both kind of always roll back to like, what can adults do for their own self-awareness and their own self-care? So, you know, something that adults can model during this time is, you know, giving themselves a bit more grace, a bit more flexibility with some of the either or black and white thinking that we tend to do. Like, I have to do X, Y, and Z, like whether or not it serves myself or the family or my role. You know, some people might get caught up with, oh, well, I have to, I don't know, I'm horrible at off the cuff examples, which I've set myself up for that. But point is, y'all know in your own lives what your black and white thinking is. Be a little bit more gray, like get into the gray area. You know, notice which of those thoughts aren't serving you, and try to find a way to like edge into something new, because if you keep coming up against that wall, that frustration, you know, it'll be difficult to serve, you know, the young people that you're working with, whether they live with you or not. And just giving yourself some grace during this time can really be helpful. And I don't know, I think like we said, when you're modeling that for young people, they may be less apt to, you know, get super frustrated or get caught in perfectionism, you know, with everything that's going on, because we're all just trying to kind of keep pushing through this time. I don't know, Monica, anything more concrete than that?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, the strategies that we would offer are different for educators and parents and are the same. Like, and they would fall under the buckets of how can I make my classroom a little more flexible and more predictable? So the same thing at home. How do I make the home a little more flexible, a little more predictable? Like for me as a parent, I have a 9 and a 10-year-old. And so we have a lot of rituals and routines that are helping us get through this time. And what that looks like is most days are the same. They still get up and get ready as if they were going to school every day. They still, you know, minus a couple days where they're like, can we please stay in our PJs, right? Like that was yesterday. But minus a couple of those days, I still have them put on their clothes. I still have them brush their teeth in the morning. We have lunch every single day on the table at 11. So we check in with a high and a low at the end of school, kind of to debrief. Or every day is like the same for us around here. And to create even more ritual and routine, we even have days that are every day last month and this month is the same. So on Mondays, we have a certain type of food. On Tuesdays, we have a certain type of food. Tuesdays we'll have like Taco Tuesday with karaoke night. Mondays, we have board games. Like Wednesday night, we have a do your own thing. One day we have crafts every night. And it's the same every Thursday. It's the same. Friday, we have pizza and a movie night. So that is consistent for them. They know what they're going to get on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We might change that up later, but right now we're in the midst of COVID. We're in the midst of a pandemic. I'm at home a lot with my kids, and those routines that I've created for their life have been something invaluable that helps them have this inner sense of safety. Their home is a sanctuary. And then we talk about safety as far as when we go outside, we set a timer. And if we have to go to a store for some reason, which I try not to, we set a timer for 10 minutes. We wear a mask. We make sure we're socially distanced, right? So those type of routines, predictability, and routine have helped my kids to thrive in the midst of a pandemic and to be able to feel the inner peace in the midst of a world that is not peaceful right now.
I just absolutely love everything both of you said. Sorry, my alarm just went off. My apologies. I also have, I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old. We have, definitely been trying to stick to our same like routine and their chores and like the same kind of predictability. I love the idea of every night doing something different and letting them choose maybe what that looks like and what that is. I think I'm going to adopt that actually. But I also love the idea of grace because like, especially these days, I feel like I can't do anything great. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing my job great. And I don't feel like I'm being a great wife. And I don't feel like I'm being a great homemaker or mother because I'm maybe I don't feel like I have the resources at the moment because it's a lot and I'm just trying to get through. But really my patience definitely it's a thing. Like these two little critters they really, really test my patience. And I definitely have less patience than I typically would if I had a break from them. And so like that grace piece I think is really important and just saying like, I am doing really the best that I can at the moment. And I just always try to think, you know what? I just need to make sure that my kids are happy as they can be during this time. Like, how do I keep them happy so that it is not as stressful or traumatic for them? And so I'm going to adopt the little ideas. I'll talk to them about that tonight, about doing something each night. And really, it just brings us back to connection and having fun together. Which, when you're with them all day, you think, that can get a little lost, that little relationship piece, and connecting, in a fun way. So thank you for that.
I have a question. I have to figure out how to form it the right way. So for a lot, like you talked about trauma as well, one type of trauma is being something that happens and is too much. It causes too much stress for us to be able to cope with. For some, like you were saying, like right now in our world, there's kind of been like an unveiling of some things that have been going on for a very, very long time that some people knew about, some people don't. Some people dealt with, some people didn't. And so when we think about some of those historic traumas, like as a parent, when I realized like, wow, I've been sitting in this for like, this was just normal to me, right? I knew it was wrong, but it was normal. I knew this was not okay for this to be going on, but it was normal. Or maybe I didn't, right? So when we address, like when you start to realize that you are dealing with a lot of historic trauma, how do you suggest parents, even our students, how can you begin to cope with that? How can you begin to kind of confront that and I don't want to say deal with it, but how do you begin to process that?
Do you have something off the top of your head, Monica?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but it did definitely.
You start, I'll finish.
Yeah. You want me to? Okay. You know, I'm very glad, Ashley, that you mentioned that as another huge component of what is happening in our present day, in our country, in our present day. There has been an awakening to some deeply rooted systemic racism that is found in our country, right? And I recently read an article titled exactly kind of what you were saying there, watching the world awaken to something I have already known was there, right? Has been painful, watching the world wake up to it. So I think if you are a person of color, a parent that has students of color, I think with this awakening, it is important more than ever. I mean, it always is, right? And I think as parents, we try our best, but it is an opportunity like no other to be a part of the conversations on race with your kids, on the pain that our ancestors have been through. And not only our ancestors, but that we still go through, right? So now lies the opportunity to educate and hopefully begin a legacy that is different than ever before, because it's not only us in a bubble dealing with it anymore. Now there's people around us that understand it to deeper levels. So I think, again, just that self-awareness and having that open conversation with your kids, maybe in a way that is not fear-based, right? Because I know historically, a lot of times when we have those conversations, it's, you need to be careful because you're brown. And if the police sees you doing the same thing that they see your little white friend doing, you're going to be treated differently, but it's out of fear, right? I think maybe we can begin to evolve and have those conversations from a place of consciousness, right? And intentionality. So have those hard conversations with your kids and begin to heal together. Share your own experience with them. Let them know what it's been like for you. Let them see the news, not those videos replayed over, right? That are going to cause more fear. But let them see things that are educational. Teaching tolerance is a great place for you to go as an educator or parent, where you can maybe get some lesson plans on how do I talk to my kid about this? Because a lot of our communities of color are being re-traumatized in seeing the world awaken to this. It's a trauma that was already there, and it's just like, now it's even, you're feeling it in your bones a lot more now because it's out, right? So, yeah.
And thanks, Monica. And I would add on top of that, because I think that is, definitely a perfect, step for all people to start having more conversations about race, centering race, speaking directly to it. But I think that this might also be a really unique time for maybe what we would consider cultural healing. So centering the things that make, whatever cultural group you belong to, like what are the vibrant strengths that you can celebrate right now? And that's joy and celebration still important. We need to give ourselves permission for that, and still be safe. But there are some pretty neat ways that communities have historically been either resilient or resistant that have made a difference and continue to make a difference to this day. And so engaging, as is safe, but with those pieces of ourselves that are finding new pieces that maybe we didn't embrace fully or didn't know another community existed with our same identity. I think that centering joy and strength too in those conversations can really even maybe move move the pendulum along just even a little more. So that's what I would add to. Thank you for the question, Ashley. It's an important,
Yeah.
it's such an important and nuanced topic that we'll definitely link in some resources to this episode.
It's a tough topic, but I love what you're saying, Leah, because it just reminds me of like, how do we use our cultural source values as a source of strength to build resilience in our students, in our kids? And maybe involve your kids in some of your cultural practices of healing related specifically to race. That makes me think of a good idea I would like to do with my kids. Just maybe have a circle with them.
Yeah, you just made me think of something too that I want to try with my son.
Yeah. Thanks, Ashley.
You know, I was just rewatching the Vernee Myers TED Talk, and it talks a lot about, or she discusses just how, you know, Leah, you mentioned the word celebration and the celebration of cultures. And I think so often, you know, in our society, we're thrown images of, people of color suffering. And then we make this association with that. And, you know, a suggestion that she had, which was kind of unique and I thought just really wonderful, was, you know, surround yourself with, people of color who are thriving. And she said specifically, like, look at really successful, wonderful Black men. Just look at there's so many of them. And just like you build this new association of, it's like, no, you don't associate fear or, you know, whatever it might be, you know, with whatever that bias is for you. It's positivity. And so how can we do that more? How can we celebrate that and, not focus on those negative stereotypes, but really trying like to reprogram the brain and, you know, kind of going on a tangent with that, like how trauma, you know, the way trauma works is we get really used to certain, you know, relying on certain pathways. And so the reason why it's so hard to unpack that when it comes to bias or trauma, you know, it's how can we be flexible, right? Using that terminology to create new pathways. I know these are two different topics that I'm trying to draw connections to, but that's just where my head's at right now.
I think they are connected, like Ashley was saying, you know, the trauma of some of the systematic oppression is just being resurfaced or surfaced, not even resurfaced, just brought to the ground level because more people are experiencing this bigger trauma. And so I think there is a connection. I'm not maybe making that connection well either with my words, but it is all together. And it's, you know, it's when the people who have felt traumatized, you know, for much longer than the pandemic, for much longer than 10 months, I don't know if they have more or fewer resources or better or weaker resiliency, but I think it's just a really important conversation to keep having. And hopefully, you know, if there is some strength in that longer term trauma, that maybe we can all learn from it. I don't know if you see that at all in some of your work.
Well, also just keeping in mind that the key here, if you haven't already picked up on it, is that resilience is not fixed. We can strengthen that, you know, and we as adults have a big impact on our students and kids, right? To help build that. So it's not an end all be all if you think that, you know, you're someone's weak in certain areas. Like there's hope there. So yeah.
So Monica and Leanne, I'm just curious if we can just maybe move forward a little bit with some action plan steps. You know, you talked about those 4 or 5 things I wrote down: predictability, flexibility, creating a safe environment, and connection. Would you suggest that families sit down and make a plan around that, or is just even starting with some of those rituals, is that a good place to start? Where can we move families to a more hopeful place?
Monica, I'll let you speak directly to that question. I'm gonna maybe speak to connection. I think that the first place families can start is making a plan for connection for the adults in the family. So that means that we adults are getting our relational needs met, and that can take some planning, especially when people are home. Oftentimes women have more of a share of household duties. I mean, just borne out by research, second shift, all that stuff. So what are we doing to make sure that we are filling our cups with connection as adults? Because I believe that adults or parents, educators, do have some innate skills to connect with the young people, but I think that sometimes they leave themselves behind in that equation. So I'd say on top of those priorities that you bring up, Joy, that we put the adults kind of at the top of the list, especially around relationships, because humans are we need to be connected beings. Like we're relational, stress does some really wacky things to relationships. And right now we've all very likely been feeling a bit more disconnected than usual. We're missing out on our daily routines, where maybe we just say, "What's up?" to the barista, or whomever, giving us our coffee, where, even that little thing we're missing. So that would be kind of something on like the ground level of the plan is, right, how are the adults at the very minimum getting their relationship needs met? Monica?
Yeah, that I would say tie that in as well, the connection piece to parents as an action plan. Put connection at the forefront of everything you're doing right now. And if you're a parent, I just first of all want to say, have some love on yourself, because most of us are doing the best that we can, right? And it's a tough time right now. Keeping your kids alive and fed and making sure they show up on the remote learning sometimes is enough. And that's okay. If you have days where it's just, we're going to make it through today, that's okay. But when you feel a little better and you're in a better place, and you have a little more emotional, reserve, sure, sit down, as you're saying, Joy, with your kids and ask your kids directly, what do you need to feel safe in this house? What do you need to feel safe for me? How can I help you? Because your safety is my priority. You can even tell your kids right now, our world isn't that safe. COVID has come into our world and we're taking care of ourselves and doing everything we can to protect ourselves. But it is important for us as a family to feel safe, and we want that in our environment. I want that in my relationship with you. So what do you need? What do you want from me? Let's come up with some fun and ways that we can connect every day. Would you like us to set the timer every day for 15 minutes and just be silly, make jokes, look at cat pictures, whatever it is, right? Little moments of connection. It doesn't have to be hours. Let's set the timer 15 minutes every day and just be us. Do you want to set the timer for 5 minutes and cuddle? Let's just cuddle. Let's just be together, right? Or maybe we can sing songs, whatever it is. You write it out, you write your wish list, and you let me know what you need to feel safe. And then you as the parent, maybe take charge a little bit more of setting up some structures for your home on rituals and routines and what you want your home to look like, and get your kids' input for sure. But work together, collaborate. Have your kids' input, and you work with them as well on creating a home that is safe, on creating a relationship that is safe. I love an article I just read today. It's called, it was a blog, and it talked about having moments every day. Like, we're not going to be happy all day long, right? And we're living in tough times. It's stressful. We're juggling so much. But what we can have is moments of connection, moments where you stop and just smile at each other, right? Moments where you take walks outside from the Greater Good Science Center. Check them out. They're a great place. But they're like, let's take walks, where you go outside and you look for things that maybe make you say, right? Me and the kids are doing that right now with Christmas stuff. We're like, look at that star or that decoration that someone made, right? It's silly things, right? Look at that cool bird. Silly things to bring some joy and bring small bursts of happiness into your daily life.
That's incredible. Thank you.
I really like that, Monica. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know. I just feel like we've covered so much today, and just thank you both for being here. I think you offered so many strategies, and also just kind of good reminders that it really is just those little bursts, those little small things that kind of keep us going, and of course that connection. So we will be sure to post some additional resources, some clickable ones on our website. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. Your mental health is so important. And yeah, take care of yourself first. You can take care of others. Thank you, Leah and Monica, again for being with us today. Jen, Joy, Ash, and we'll see you next time, everyone.
Thanks for having us.